Welcome back to Coffee Talk Tuesday. My name again is Chalese Stevens, and I'm here with my co-host Trip Mitchell and our incredible, blessed guest, Stacey Bess.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on our
So,
show.
Stacey, you were talking about how amazing it was in the beginning, and you talked about the kids and their parents and stuff. Do we do enough for homeless youth in our culture?
I think we're getting really better at it, a whole lot better at it than we used to. We have liaisons from the shelter to the school, from the school to the shelter. We got rid of all of the rules that said if you don't have the correct records when you show up to a school. We have given wherever your car is parked is your address. I mean, they have come a long way. And I think that's why the shelter school isn't there anymore, because we have learned so much and policy has been changed that allows these kids to have what they need. I am hoping, I won't tell you for sure, that teachers and students in the schools these kids go to are welcoming and kind, because homeless children tend to divulge more information than they should. Kind of like you and I, when we're really struggling, we tend to share things that people could use against us or hurt us. And it's awfully embarrassing to pull up in the van from the shelter or in...
Especially when kids get to 5 or 6.
Absolutely.
Grade 5 or 6.
They get to an age where they're very aware of
class.
And we stop at your shelter to pick you guys up after we're picked up. So those are the things I'm always worried about. That stops kids from wanting to walk in the building. But no, I've heard many good things about how much they're working with our homeless children.
And really Salt Lake, so it sounds like Salt Lake School District was way ahead of districts around the country.
I felt like they were. The Road Home came to the Salt Lake City School District and said, hey, we're documenting hundreds of kids that are falling through the cracks. And Salt Lake City School District stood up and said, well, then let's try something. It's a unique thing. Let's try to place education right inside your shelter and catch those kids who would otherwise fall through the cracks. Now, I will tell you, when I speak all over the country, I'm always faced with somebody that says that is unequal. You cannot have a school in a shelter. And because of experience, I will tell you I will agree with that. But I will also tell you that we give these families, we always gave them the opportunity to keep their children where they were or to place them in a school in the area. I bent over backwards to get those kids to the school they needed to be in. So it was strictly an opportunity to save those children who would not otherwise get the education they needed. And quite honestly, we were the most watched school ever. We had University of Utah students from the Benyon Center every day. Every kid almost had an adult in the room that was helping them. We were studied by the University of Utah. We had great moms that didn't have anything in their own kids' school, or maybe their kids had grown up and that wanted to be our PTA leaders. So we were watched a lot and studied.
Well, and you wrote this incredible book, Nobody Doesn't Love Nobody. And in it, it's a compilation of just stories of your children, right? Of the kids that you...
You know, Chalese, I'm going to give you an amazing compliment.
I always hesitate when you're going to do this.
You are the best reader I know. You've got this wonderful book, and it looks like you've never read it all the way through. You read and then close it in the right position.
Well, actually, my book is in the back. I'm glad that she brought another one.
Oh, okay, good.
It's got like water on it. But no, this is the book. And was this what was turned into the movie?
It was. And so let me just tell you a little bit about, I wasn't actually writing a book. I was keeping a journal. And every night I would sit down at my desk and write about these incredible kids. And I kept thinking, these guys have amazing stories, and they are resilient and they're powerful. And and they have so much to say. And so every night I'm writing about families, and then I had some children live with me while their mommy was in rehab and their daddy was in prison, and I had I had many children live with me. And so I was writing about these kids saying, wow, I've learned so much. So then a friend called me and said, I dare you to take this to a publisher. You have an incredible story. And they bought it.
Oh.
It was pretty remarkable to have them believe that I had a message to tell.
The kids that got to stay with you, did they feel like they hit the mother load?
You know, it was interesting. We live in an upper middle class neighborhood, and we put them in some pretty remarkable schools. And everything I had been saying to my husband about how unkind we adults can be, even when we're not aware, my husband got to see. So my husband Greg took Robert. We had 3 beautiful children come live with us while their mommy was in rehab and their daddy was in prison. And I took the 2 to my own children's elementary school, the 2 younger ones, and then I asked Greg if he would enroll Robert at the junior high. And he got there, and the lady said, the secretary, Mr. Bess, you realize this is a very upper level junior high. This child will never succeed. And Greg said it took everything I had to stay calm as I watched this beautiful young man who believed he was on top of the world and that he could.
She said this in front of him?
In front of him.
Wow.
Do we have this woman's name and address?
No, we don't. And we're very careful with that.
But I want to know where you live.
But I want you to understand that, guess who was amazing? The kids, the students, the neighbors. At the elementary level, the resource teacher brought her husband to meet them. There were plenty of people who loved them and who gave them everything that they needed to be successful. The tragedy of that little group is after 4 months, Mom and Dad had done what they were told to do, and we were to give them back. And that was painful. We delivered them back, and then at Christmas time, I went to give them presents, and they were gone. And it broke my heart.
Have you ever seen them again?
So yes, I have. So they left. Didn't hear from them for 3 or 4 years, and then one morning I had just gotten home from a doctor's appointment, and they said, you may have skin lymphoma. And I had little bruises all over me. And they biopsied it, and I came home and I was all alone, and I kind of yelled out loud, why me? I thought I was doing so much in this world. And the telephone rang. And Robert, the oldest, was on the other end, and I was standing in my office, and I heard this older male voice say, Mama, it's Robert.
Oh.
And I just slid down the wall and started to cry. And he said, Opal's on the other end. We just wanted to tell you, you were the best mama we ever had. And that's all I needed. They didn't know I was struggling. But we talked for a long time, and they Facebook with me all the time, and they want.
How are they doing now?
They're doing well. Opal was going to paralegal school. Robert had held the same job for 7 years.
Wow.
Tony, at this point, I believe he's out of prison, but he was our most beloved child. He was tender. He was so cute, and he could not read. And it didn't matter how hard I worked and how many hours my volunteers worked with him. Because of the way the mama lived while she was pregnant, he could not
So
get that
he
information.
had a disability due to her consuming
Yeah.
drugs or alcohol while...
Yeah. And all the moving back and forth and in and out of foster care. So we talk a lot. They write to me a lot. That young man that was kneeling before my car that day calls me a lot. We talk. He lives in Alaska. He wrote to me on my 50th birthday. I had not heard from him. I'd looked for him. He was beautiful. He lived with us for a while. And he wrote to me. I opened it up, and he said, to my favorite rock star teacher, I'll call you later.
How many kids lived with you and your husband and your kids?
So let's see, we'll do it in groups. I had Maria lived with me while her daddy had been kicked out of the shelter, so she came to live with me for a while. Beautiful little girl. Matter of fact, her life is shown in the movie, and that's the number one question I get asked is, do you ever see her? And I have never been able to find her. I have written her name on every list I can find, and there's many with her real name. And you should know I changed their names so that I can keep their privacy. And then Zachary, who was kneeling before my car that day, stayed with us for a while. And then the 3 children.
Wow.
Yeah.
And your kids, what did they think of the experience?
You know, I won't paint a really rosy picture. They loved them deeply. I did allow Opal to wear one of Nicole's dresses once, and she showed up to school in one of Nicole's favorite dresses, and that was a sister fight.
Okay.
But I remember laying on the bed with my oldest boy, Brandon, and his 6th grade teacher said, you can get double points if you'll read out loud with your mom, which they never, 6th graders don't read out loud with their mom. And I said, hey, bud, you've never read my book. Do you want to do that? Let's do that. And we were reading Opal, Tony, and Robert's story. And he was such a cool dude and didn't want to cry in front of his mom. And I look over about halfway through the chapter, and he's got big tears rolling down his cheeks. And I said, buddy, tell me what you're feeling. And he said, I loved them. I really loved them. And I thought, oh, we really did do great things for you two. Now, I will tell you that I've had 6 children, and Mackenzie was part of this. So the first 3 got to be part of it and got to feel the joy of serving. My last 3 have felt the joy of living in a wonderful home in a wonderful neighborhood and having a swimming pool. And they're not, I don't want to say they're not nearly as aware of other people's needs, but boy, did the first 3 get that knowledge of how important we are to each other.
You know, one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have you on this show is because you actually inspired me to finish my book, because 16 years ago I lost my son, and I kept journal entries with intentions to one day write a book.
Mhm.
And when you did this, and it was like stories and things like that, that's what I wanted my book to be, journal entries and stories. And so you were a huge inspiration to me. So
Oh, thank you.
thank you for that. And
This is really an amazing story.
Well,
Who
we
played
owe
you
each
in
other them.
who played in the movie?
So Emily Van Camp played me, and the kids, Gerald Mullen, who is the executive producer of Schindler's List and Jurassic Park, was the first to own my rights. And he called me one day and said, I'm coming to the Marriott. I would love to meet you. And so at first I thought it was my husband teasing me. And so then I went to the Marriott and met him, and he bought the rights. And then he shopped it throughout Hollywood. And so then he called one day and he said, who would you like to play you? And I said, Jerry, I got to tell you, not a big movie watcher. So tonight I'll talk to my boys about it. And I have 4 boys that are very manly, and they all said, Megan Fox should play you. And I said, she's beautiful, but I kind of like somebody that comes across, kind of teacherish. And they said, no, she's really sexy. And I said, well, guys, I'm not really that concerned about how sexy she is. And then Jerry said, I think I found the most wonderful woman. Her name's Emily Van Camp. She's a star. She's amazing. And on the first day of filming, she was so tender. And so she said to me, I want to play you as who you are. And there's no one who would have gotten through that in 11 years without being feisty. And I smiled and said, uh-huh. She said, can I please play you as feisty? And I said, yeah. And then she got a little bit teary and she said, Stacey, I love teachers. I love education. I'm terrified to play you. And I said, you'll be amazing. And then I had the headphones on, sitting in the director's chair with the director. And I'm not kidding you, her voice was identical to my voice.
Those people are amazing. We have run out of time.
Oh my goodness. Well, you speak all over the nation, and is there anything that you would like to, any websites or anything that people can go to get a
Yes.
hold of you if they need to?
So I'd love lots of opportunities to speak. You can go to www.staceybess.com. You can email me. I think if you Google me, there's lots of ways to find me.
Perfect. Awesome.
Well,
All right.
this has been an amazing half hour.
I know. I'm like
Thank
totally
you.
filled. I needed this today more than you know, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, please go comment, like, share our video or podcast, and you guys can view this if you want to see it on YouTube. You can view it on YouTube or any of the stations that have podcast, Spotify, iTunes, all that stuff. So thank you guys and have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week.
In summer 2004, as a 4-year-old Caleb's body emerged from an overcrowded water park's pool in Utah, every mother's worst nightmare became reality for Chalese Stevens. Would healing ever begin? Without an answer, she experienced truths about deep loss and grief's throttle. By age 40, she awakened to joy and motherhood. Finding 40, available on Amazon and wherever digital copies are sold.